The millionaire married a fashion designer to save his empire, but she healed his heart. Empires can be rebuilt, but hearts, they need to be mended from the inside. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Nathan Gray was once called the golden boy of American fashion. As the CEO of Gray Atelier, his name stood for precision, luxury, and perfection. Every show he produced was a masterpiece. Every headline crowned him as the genius who brought elegance back to the runway. But behind the glamour, his empire was collapsing. A scandal had erupted across every major magazine and fashion blog. Gray Atelier was accused of plagiarizing a smaller designer's work. The accusation spread like wildfire. Investors withdrew, partners canceled contracts, and the press demanded Nathan's resignation. Inside the boardroom, tension was suffocating. Sitting across from him was his half-brother, Damon Gray, calm, collected, and quietly satisfied. He had always envied Nathan's success, believing he deserved to inherit their late father's controlling shares. According to their father's will, if the company ever suffered a major reputational failure, control would automatically shift to Damon. And now, that clause was about to take effect. Nathan's mind raced. He knew this was not a coincidence. The timing was too perfect. The leaked designs, the headlines, even the internal documents, everything felt orchestrated. But proof was hard to find, and the clock was ticking. Publicly, Nathan appeared unshaken. He attended charity galas, smiled for the cameras, and pretended everything was under control. Privately, he was burning inside. The empire he built from the ground up was slipping through his fingers. He had spent his entire life chasing perfection, yet one rumor threatened to erase it all. The PR team proposed a bold solution, a strategy that could soften his image and restore public trust. It sounded absurd at first. A marriage. Not a real one, but a carefully staged partnership with someone the public would adore, someone creative, humble, and pure. A love story that could humanize the cold, perfectionist millionaire. Nathan hated the idea. Marriage was not a business tool. But as the days passed and the headlines grew darker, desperation began to replace pride. He finally asked, who would agree to something like this? The answer came quickly. A name appeared in the PR folder. Aria Lin. She was a young fashion designer from San Francisco, once celebrated for her delicate, emotion-driven collections. Years ago, she had applied to Gray Atelier with her portfolio, and a month later, a nearly identical design appeared in one of Nathan's shows. The scandal had destroyed her small boutique. She never received an apology, and she never forgot. Now, her life was quiet but difficult. Her mother was ill, her savings nearly gone, and her career seemed over. When Nathan's team reached out with a proposal, a 6-month marriage contract, and full creative control of a new healing line, she hesitated. It felt like betrayal of her own values. But deep down, she also saw something else. An opportunity to reclaim her voice and face the man whose empire had once crushed her dream. Nathan did not expect her to accept, but she did with one condition. There would be no lies in her designs, no empty beauty. If she was to help rebuild his image, it would be through truth and emotion, not illusion. As Nathan signed the agreement, he told himself it was just business, a temporary arrangement. But as he looked into Aria's calm, steady eyes, something inside him shifted, a faint unease, a feeling he could not define. Outside, the winter wind swept across Manhattan, and the world waited for the next headline. No one yet knew that this fake marriage born from scandal and survival would become the one thing that would save not just a company, but 2 broken hearts. The ceremony was simple, elegant, and completely strategic. Nathan Gray stood beside Aria Lin under a cascade of white orchids, surrounded by flashing cameras and whispers from the fashion elite. Reporters called it the union of genius and grace. To the world, it looked like love. To Nathan, it was survival. He wore a calm expression, his dark suit tailored to perfection. But beneath that composure, His mind was calculating every move. Every headline, every photograph, every handshake was a step toward repairing the brand he had built and almost lost. Gray Atelier needed a miracle, and this marriage was the last card he had to play. Aria, in contrast, looked fragile yet resolute. Her gown was one of her own designs, minimal, flowing, and painted with faint brushstrokes of soft gold. The dress shimmered under the lights like a sunrise after a storm. She smiled politely for the cameras, but behind that gentle smile lay an ocean of conflicting emotions. This was not the fairy tale wedding she had once dreamed of. It was a contract 6 months of shared appearances, endless interviews, and the heavy weight of pretending to belong to a man she once despised. When the ceremony ended, the applause echoed hollowly in her ears. Nathan leaned close, whispering just loudly enough for the microphones to catch his words. "Welcome to Gray Atelier, Mrs. Gray." She replied softly, "Let us hope your empire can be saved." That evening, the headlines exploded. Fashion's new power couple. The millionaire who found love in his own studio. The world fell for the illusion. Orders began to rise, followers multiplied, and Gray Atelier's stock price ticked upward for the first time in months. Nathan's strategy was working. But inside the mansion where they now lived, the silence was thick. Their contract outlined everything: shared appearances, work schedules, sleeping arrangements in separate rooms, and a strict clause forbidding any emotional involvement. To Nathan, it was business. To Aria, it was confinement wrapped in luxury. Still, she kept her word. Every morning, she arrived at the design studio before anyone else. She organized sketches, adjusted fabrics, and began creating a line that reflected lightness and renewal. She called it the healing line. Her designs spoke of recovery, resilience, and beauty born from imperfection. The staff, once cold and skeptical, slowly began to admire her. Nathan noticed the change. For the first time, the atelier was filled with laughter again. He watched from his office window as Aria guided a junior designer through color palettes, her hands moving gracefully across the table. He realized that her calm strength was something the company and perhaps he himself had long been missing. At lunch, he joined her in the studio. "You have everyone working like it is spring again," he said quietly. Aria did not look up. "People work better when they feel seen, Mr. Gray." The simplicity of her answer disarmed him. Days turned into weeks. Public appearances became smoother, interviews less forced. The media adored their chemistry, calling them the couple who saved couture. But in private, the distance between them remained polite, professional, yet increasingly charged with an energy neither could ignore. One evening, after a long day of fittings, Aria found Nathan still in his office, staring at the company's declining financial report. She placed a small cup of tea beside him. "It is chamomile," she said. "It helps you breathe." He looked up, surprised. "Do you really think tea can fix this?" Aria smiled faintly. "No, but kindness might." For a long moment, neither spoke. The noise of the city faded into the background, leaving only the quiet hum of the night and the unspoken truth that something inside both of them was beginning to change. Their marriage might have started as a contract, but in the gentle rhythm of her presence, Nathan felt something he had not known in years' peace. And deep down, though neither dared to admit it, both of them began to realize that perhaps this arrangement was not just about saving an empire. It was about saving two lonely souls who had forgotten what it meant to feel alive. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of Gray Atelier, casting soft gold across the polished floors. Aria Lin stood in the center of the design studio, surrounded by bolts of silk, cotton, and linen. Her hands moved with quiet precision as she pinned a piece of pale blue fabric to a mannequin. It was the beginning of what she called the healing line, a collection born not from luxury, but from emotion. Nathan Gray entered silently, watching her from the doorway. There was something about the way she worked that unsettled him. Every gesture was patient and deliberate, as if she was repairing something invisible. He realized that for the first time in months, the building no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt alive again. The staff whispered about her. "She listens. She remembers every name. She even eats lunch with us." Under Aria's influence, the atelier had begun to breathe again. The cold corporate atmosphere Nathan once ruled with precision was softening into warmth and creativity. Nathan joined her by the work table. "You have a gift," he said quietly. Aria did not look up. "Everyone here has one. They just forgot what it feels like to use it. Her tone was calm, but her words hit deeper than she intended. Nathan nodded and left without replying. Days turned into weeks, and the line began to take shape. Aria's design spoke of recovery and renewal. Flowing skirts replaced sharp suits, and muted tones replaced the bold colors Nathan once demanded. When he questioned the change, she simply said, "Fashion is not only about power, it is also about peace." One afternoon, the design team gathered for a fitting. The room buzzed with excitement as a model stepped onto the runway wearing Aria's latest creation, a gown made of layered silk in shades of ivory and soft gray. The staff gasped. The dress seemed to move like water. Nathan studied it in silence before saying, "It feels alive." Aria smiled faintly. "That is the point." Okay. Outside the studio, the press began to notice. Photos leaked from the upcoming collection, and social media buzzed with curiosity. Gray Atelier's mysterious rebirth. A softer side of the millionaire designer. Sales inquiries flooded in. Investors who once hesitated were now asking for meetings, but not everyone was pleased. Damon Gray watched the resurgence from his office across town, frustration burning behind his perfect smile. He had spent months orchestrating Nathan's downfall, only to see his brother rise again thanks to a woman Damon considered insignificant. Meanwhile, Nathan and Aria's relationship shifted in quiet, unspoken ways. They still lived by the contract, separate rooms, no affection. Yet, small details betrayed them. She began leaving coffee on his desk every morning. He started walking her to the elevator after long nights. Their conversations, once cold and clipped, grew longer and softer. One evening, after a design meeting, the storm outside cut the power. The entire atelier fell into darkness. Aria lit a candle from her desk and set it on the table. Nathan sat across from her, the flickering light drawing gold across his face. "You are not afraid of storms, are you?" he asked. She shook her head. "Storms do not scare me. Silence does." Nathan leaned back, studying her. "You speak as if everything has meaning." Aria smiled. "Maybe it does. Even this storm could be trying to wash something clean." For a long moment, they said nothing more. The candlelight danced between them, and the rain tapped gently against the windows. In that fragile silence, something changed. Nathan no longer saw Aria as a contractual partner or a public image. He saw a woman who carried both strength and softness, a reminder of the humanity he had buried beneath ambition. And as the storm passed, leaving the studio bathed in silver light, Nathan realized that her presence had done something no PR strategy ever could. She had begun to heal the empire he built and the heart he had forgotten he still possessed. The storm had passed, but the calm that followed was short-lived. 2 weeks after that night, Gray Atelier was brighter than ever. The studio buzzed with energy. The healing line was nearly finished, and critics were already calling it the most anticipated collection of the season. For the first time in a year, Nathan Gray allowed himself to breathe. Investors were returning, the media was softening, and the world was beginning to forget the scandal that had nearly destroyed him. Yet somewhere behind that new peace, trouble was stirring again. Damon Gray had not disappeared. He had been waiting quietly, collecting small pieces of ammunition, emails, contracts, digital drafts, anything that could be twisted to his advantage. His envy had turned into obsession. Watching his younger brother rise again because of Aria Lin felt like salt in an old wound. In the middle of a quiet morning, Aria entered Nathan's office with a portfolio in her hands. "Here are the final sketches," she said softly. Nathan looked up from his laptop and smiled. "You have done it, Aria. This collection is going to save us." Her eyes glowed with pride and relief. "Then maybe we both deserve a little peace." But that peace was about to break. By afternoon, the news hit. Fashion blogs began posting headlines faster than Gray Atelier could respond. Exclusive, Gray Atelier's healing line designs leaked. Sources claim the new line is copied from Aria Lin's past work. Plagiarism scandal returns, this time from within. Within hours, social media exploded. Images of Aria's past sketches were placed side by side with the new designs. To the untrained eye, they looked similar. Too similar. The accusations spread like wildfire. The company's PR inbox flooded, the board demanded explanations, and the press camped outside the building. Nathan felt the air leave his lungs. "Who leaked this?" he demanded during an emergency meeting. No one spoke. Across the table, Damon sat with a faint smirk. It is a shame, really. I warned you about trusting outsiders. Nathan turned to him sharply. You did this, did you not? Damon shrugged. Prove it. The evidence was convincing emails showing Aria sending drafts to herself. File timestamps manipulated to make it appear she had stolen designs. Damon had forged everything with precision. The more Nathan tried to disprove it, the more guilty Aria appeared. Aria stood silently as the accusation surrounded her. I did not copy anything, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Those sketches are mine. They always were. Nathan's jaw tightened. Then explain why they were sent from your account last night. I did not. She stopped, realizing there was no way to defend herself against a lie crafted this perfectly. Her heart sank as she saw doubt flicker in Nathan's eyes. That evening, the board held an emergency vote. They insisted Aria be suspended from all duties until the investigation was complete. Nathan, exhausted and cornered, agreed. When he found her packing her things in the studio, he said quietly, if this is true, it could end everything we have rebuilt. Aria looked up at him with tears in her eyes. You mean everything you have rebuilt? I was never part of your empire, was I? Nathan opened his mouth but could not speak. She placed a folded note on the desk. This is my resignation. Thank you for proving that trust here is still a luxury. Before he could stop her, she walked out. Later that night, Nathan sat alone in his office, surrounded by the soft hum of city lights. He reread her designs, her notes, her letters, searching for something, anything that could prove she was innocent. But the evidence against her seemed undeniable. In another part of the city, Aria walked through the empty streets, her suitcase dragging behind her. The rain had started again, washing away the last glow of the day. She thought about how easily one lie could undo months of effort, how fragile reputation truly was. But deep inside, beneath the hurt and exhaustion, a small spark remained. She knew the truth, and the truth, no matter how long it took, always found a way to surface. Back at Gray Atelier, Nathan stared at the skyline from his window. For the first time, the silence in his life felt unbearable. He had wanted control, order, and protection for his empire. But as he looked around the office that suddenly felt empty, he realized he had traded something far greater for a trust. Outside, thunder rolled again in the distance. The empire had survived the storm once, but this time, Nathan feared it might not survive without the one person who had taught him what it meant to breathe again. The days that followed were chaos. Gray Atelier, once the symbol of elegance and innovation, now stood on the edge of collapse for the second time. The forged evidence spread faster than any official statement could contain. Clients canceled orders, models backed out of upcoming shows, and journalists camped outside the building, waiting for Nathan Gray to break his silence. Inside the once bustling studio, silence replaced the sound of sewing machines. Employees avoided eye contact, afraid to choose sides. The healing line, which had once promised a rebirth, now felt cursed. Every unfinished dress on the rack looked like a reminder of failure. Nathan sat in his office, surrounded by stacks of reports and legal letters. His reflection in the glass wall looked older, heavier, and defeated. He had convinced himself he was right to doubt Aria Lin, that the evidence was too clear to ignore. Yet, each time he tried to move forward, something inside him resisted. On his desk lay the note Aria had left behind, folded, worn, and reread too many times. Trust is a luxury. Those words echoed in his mind. He remembered her calm voice, the way she listened to his staff, the way she had brought life back to this place. Could someone like her truly destroy what they built together? Damon entered without knocking, wearing the same confident grin he always did. You should not let this destroy you, he said casually, pouring himself a glass of scotch. These things happen in business. Nathan looked up slowly. You seem very comfortable for someone watching the company fall apart. Damon shrugged. If you had listened to me earlier, this would not have happened. You were too blinded by that woman. Nathan's eyes narrowed. You mean the woman who saved this company before your lies tore it apart again? Damon's smile faded slightly. Be careful what you accuse me of, brother. The board listens to me now. After Damon left, Nathan opened the company server, scanning through files late into the night. Something did not add up. The supposed emails from Aria looked too clean, timestamps perfectly aligned, attachments formatted identically. It was almost too perfect. He called the IT director at midnight. I want every file from Aria Lin's account rechecked, he ordered. Look at the metadata, the timestamps, the IP, addresses, everything. The man hesitated. That might take a few days, Mr. Gray. Nathan's voice was steady but cold. Then do not sleep until it is done. 3 days later, he received the report. The emails had been sent from an internal address, someone within Gray Atelier. The IP matched Damon's personal device. The truth hit Nathan like a blade. His half-brother had forged everything. The next morning, Nathan walked into the boardroom during a meeting. Every executive turned as he dropped the printed report onto the table. This, he said, is what destroyed us. Damon's face went pale. What are you talking about? Nathan's voice remained calm, but his eyes burned. You manipulated the system. You faked the emails, planted files, and framed Aria Lin. It is over, Damon. Security entered moments later. Damon tried to protest, shouting about loyalty and family, but the evidence was undeniable. As he was escorted out, he looked back and sneered, You always choose the wrong people, Nathan, and that will be your downfall. When the door closed, the room fell silent. Nathan exhaled, the weight of guilt crushing his chest. I built this empire on control, he said quietly, but I lost it because I forgot to trust. That night, he stood in the empty atelier. The mannequin still wore Aria's unfinished dresses. The soft blue fabric of her final design caught the light, fluttering slightly in the air. Nathan touched it gently, as if it were a piece of her still there. He whispered, I am sorry, Aria. Outside, the city glowed faintly under the rain. Nathan stared out the window and thought about how everything had come full circle. He had spent his life building walls to protect himself, and now those same walls had trapped him inside. For the first time, he no longer cared about investors, headlines, or even the company's survival. What haunted him most was not the loss of an empire, but the loss of the woman who had shown him what it meant to live again. He picked up his phone, scrolling through old messages, stopping at her name. But there was nothing left to say, not yet. Not until he found the courage to face her, not as the CEO who had once hired her, but as the man who had finally learned that power meant nothing without heart. A month passed since Damon Gray was removed from Gray Atelier, but the victory felt hollow. The company was barely standing. Orders had vanished, sponsors had fled, and Nathan Gray faced the quiet aftermath of betrayal. The empire he once ruled with precision now felt like an empty cathedral, echoing with regret. Nathan spent his days rebuilding and his nights searching for peace. Yet one thought haunted him constantly, Aria Lin. Her absence left a silence deeper than failure itself. She had been right all along. Trust was a luxury he had never learned to afford. One morning, while reading an industry article, Nathan froze. The headline read, Aria Lin returns with her own line healing couture triumphs in Los Angeles. His breath caught. The article described a small fashion show she had organized for local charities, featuring designs that embodied resilience and emotion. Her new collection, Threads of Grace, had become the talk of the industry. Critics praised her work as a revolution of empathy in fashion. Hold. Nathan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. He should have felt pride for her success, but all he felt was the ache of loss. He had doubted her, betrayed her trust, and driven her away. He scrolled through photos attached to the article. There she was, graceful and confident, standing beside models wearing flowing dresses in soft pastels. Her smile was calm, mature, and free. He had never seen her look that peaceful. Later that evening, Nathan attended a private charity gala. It was a small event filled with familiar faces from the fashion world. Conversation swirled around him, but he barely listened. Then, across the room, he saw her. Aria was speaking with a group of young designers, her laughter bright and effortless. For a moment, Nathan could not move. He had imagined seeing her again, rehearse what he would say, but now every word felt inadequate. Gathering courage, he walked across the room. Aria, he said softly. She turned, and her expression froze in surprise. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then she said calmly, Nathan, I did not expect to see you here. I did not expect to see you anywhere, he admitted. I thought you would never want to be in the same room with me again. Aria nodded. For a while, I did not, but time changes things. He hesitated before speaking. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I found the truth. Damon forged everything. The emails, the sketches, he wanted to destroy us both. Her eyes softened. though her voice remained measured. I know, the truth has a way of surfacing. Someone from your IT team reached out to me after he left. I chose not to respond. I needed distance. Nathan swallowed hard. You had every right to walk away. But I came here tonight to say what I should have said long ago. I am sorry. Not just for doubting you, but for forgetting that there are things more important than power. Aria looked at him for a long moment. You built an empire, Nathan. You just forgot to build a heart inside it. He smiled faintly. I am learning. The host called her to the stage to speak about her charity work. As she walked away, Nathan felt something shift inside him, a mix of admiration and longing. He realized he did not want to win her back through apologies or business partnerships. He wanted to understand the peace she had found. After the event ended, he found her outside near the courtyard fountain. The evening air was cool, and the city lights shimmered on the water. Aria, he said quietly, what you are doing, it is more than fashion. She smiled. That was always the point. Fashion should not just dress the body. It should heal the soul. Nathan looked down. Would you ever let me help? Aria hesitated. Help, yes, but not control. If we work together again, it must come from honesty. He nodded. Then honesty it will be. They stood in silence for a moment, neither sure what would come next. The night felt full of possibilities. As Aria left, Nathan watched her disappear into the crowd, her soft beige coat trailing behind her. For the first time, the future did not feel like a continuation of his empire. It felt like a new beginning waiting to be sewn together. Somewhere deep down, he knew their story was not over. It had simply shifted from survival to something greater, redemption. Nathan Gray drove west along the coast, the sun dipping low over the Pacific. A soft radio hum filled the car, but his mind was elsewhere. It had been 3 weeks since he saw Aria Lin again at the charity gala. 3 weeks since she told him that honesty had to come before anything else. He had spent every day thinking about what that meant. He found her at a small coastal town in California, where a modest sign read, Lin Workshop Fashion for Healing. Through the large glass windows, he saw her teaching a group of young girls how to sew. Their laughter echoed faintly over the sound of waves. Aria stood among them, calm and radiant, her hands guiding a child's small fingers along a piece of fabric. Nathan hesitated at the door before stepping inside. The bell above the entrance rang softly. Aria looked up, surprised but not startled. Nathan, she said quietly, you found me. I did not mean to intrude, he replied. I only wanted to see how you were doing. The children looked between them curiously before Aria smiled and said, take a short break, everyone. She walked toward Nathan, folding her arms gently. You should not have come all this way just to check on me. Maybe not, he said, but I had to. They sat near the corner where sunlight spilled across a table covered with sewing tools. Nathan glanced at the patchwork fabrics, each piece different, yet stitched together beautifully. You are still building things, he said softly. Aria smiled. Mending, not building. There is a difference. These girls have all been through difficult things. Sewing helps them remember that broken pieces can become something whole again. Nathan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. You always had a way of seeing meaning in everything. Meaning keeps us human, she replied gently. Something you used to forget when all you saw were numbers and headlines. He leaned forward, his voice low. I came to say I am sorry again. I know words do not fix what I did, but I need you to know that I am not the same man who let you walk away. Aria studied him for a long moment. You were never cruel, Nathan, just afraid of losing control. But control is not strength. It is fear dressed in discipline. He smiled faintly. Then maybe it is time I learned something new. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, the sound of ocean waves blended with laughter from the children. Nathan felt a calm he had not known in years. Aria broke the silence. What happens to Gray Atelier now? It will survive, he said, but not as it was. I have decided to close half the operations and rebuild with a new purpose. I want it to be about people again, not perfection. She looked thoughtful. And where do you fit into that? I am still learning, he admitted, but I know it will not work without what you taught me. Her eyes softened and she reached for a spool of thread. Healing takes time. It is not a straight line. She handed him the thread. Start here. Nathan turned the spool in his hands, feeling the texture between his fingers. You are teaching me again. Old habits, she said with a small laugh. When the children returned to the table, Nathan watched them sew with quiet focus. Aria moved among them, patient and kind. He realized that this, her piece, her purpose, was what he had been searching for all along. As the sun dipped lower, Aria walked him to the door. "You have a long drive back," she said. He hesitated. "Would you ever consider working together again? Not as partners in a contract, but as people who believe in the same thing?" Aria smiled gently. "Maybe one day, but for now, let us both keep mending what is broken in our own ways." Nathan nodded, stepping out into the golden light. The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and hope. For the first time, he did not feel lost. He finally understood that healing was not about erasing the past, it was about learning how to live with it and turning every scar into a stitch of strength. Months later, spring arrived along the California coast, bringing with it a sense of renewal that matched the rhythm of Nathan Gray's life. The waves outside his new office rolled gently against the shore, and the salty air carried a quiet kind of peace. He had downsized Gray Atelier as promised, closing unnecessary divisions and rebuilding the company around a single idea fashioned with heart. He called the new line ReStitch, inspired by the words Aria Lin had once said, "Mending, not building." The brand was no longer about power or perfection. It was about connection. Each piece was designed to tell a story of transformation. Nathan donated part of the profits to support small community workshops across the country, including the one Aria had founded by the sea. The press began to notice. Articles appeared with headlines like "Gray Atelier Finds Its Soul" and "From Scandal to Compassion, the Rebirth of Nathan Gray." But for the first time, Nathan did not care about the praise. He cared about purpose. One morning, he drove back to the coastal town where it had all begun. Aria was still there, surrounded by young students in her workshop. She looked up as he entered, her smile surprised but warm. "Nathan," she greeted, "you are a difficult man to forget, and you are impossible to replace," he replied with a small grin. He showed her the lookbook for ReStitch. Each page featured soft fabrics, flowing silhouettes, and stories of resilience from people who had once felt broken but found beauty again. Aria turned the pages slowly, her expression thoughtful. "This feels different," she said quietly. "This feels honest." "That is because it is," Nathan replied. "You taught me that healing is not a trend, it is a responsibility." She looked at him for a long moment, the faintest light of pride in her eyes. "So what do you want from me this time, Mr. Gray?" He smiled. "Nothing that can be written in a contract." Together, they visited the local art center later that afternoon. Nathan had arranged a surprise, a small runway built in the courtyard, surrounded by strings of lights and rows of seats for the community. Instead of professional models, local artists and children from Aria's workshop would wear the designs. The event was free, open to anyone who wished to attend. When evening came, the lights glowed softly against the twilight. Music drifted through the air, and laughter filled the space. The audience clapped as each person walked proudly down the runway, wearing pieces that represented hope, unity, and renewal. Aria stood beside Nathan, watching the show unfold. "You did this," she said quietly. He shook his head. "We did this. You planted the seed long before I understood it." When the final model stepped onto the runway, Nathan turned to her. "This is the first of many. ReStitch will sponsor free art programs across the country. Every design sold will fund another workshop like yours." Aria's eyes glistened under the lights. "You kept your promise." "I had to," he said. "It was the only way to make things right." As the show ended, the crowd rose in applause. Some cheered, some cried, and a few simply stood in silence, touched by the emotion behind what they had witnessed. Nathan felt the same warmth spread through him, a feeling of redemption, not through success, but through purpose. Later that night, when the courtyard had emptied, Nathan and Aria walked along the beach. The moonlight shimmered across the water, and the ocean whispered like an old friend. "You finally found peace," Aria said softly. "Not completely," he replied, looking at her, "but I found where it begins." For the first time, there was no tension, no unspoken pain between them, only gratitude and quiet understanding. As the waves washed against the shore, Nathan realized that the story of his empire had never truly been about fashion at all. It had always been about finding the courage to rebuild one stitch at a time, until love itself became the design that healed them both. The weeks that followed the ReStitch showcase were filled with quiet triumphs. Orders came in from all over the country, not because of prestige or status, but because people connected with the story behind every design. Each piece carried a message of rebuilding, of love stitched into loss. Nathan Gray no longer felt like the man who once chased perfection. He finally understood that imperfection was where true beauty lived. On a warm afternoon, Nathan returned to the coastal workshop. The sun shimmered on the ocean, and the air smelled of salt and spring. Aria Lin was there, seated by the window, sketching new designs. A soft breeze lifted strands of her hair as she looked up and smiled. "You are early," she said playfully. "I did not want to miss your latest creation," he replied, setting a small box on the table beside her. She raised an eyebrow. "You brought a gift?" "Not exactly," Nathan said, opening the box to reveal a single golden key. "It is for the new ReStitch studio. I want you to have it. You are not just the soul behind this line, Aria. You are the heart that made it possible." Aria held the key, her expression softening. "You do not need to give me anything, Nathan. You already gave me back my faith in people." He smiled gently. "Maybe, but I owe you more than that. You gave me back my faith in myself." They stood in silence for a moment, the ocean waves murmuring outside. Aria walked toward a rack of dresses and pulled out one made of light ivory fabric. "I made this for the next showcase," she said. "It is called wholeness. Every seam represents something mended." Nathan traced the stitching with his fingertips. "It is beautiful." "It is honest," she replied. That evening, they hosted a small dinner at the workshop to celebrate the success of ReStitch. The same girls Aria had taught months ago were there, now young apprentices proudly wearing their own handmade dresses. Laughter filled the room, mingling with the glow of candlelight. Nathan raised his glass and said simply, "To second chances." Huh. When the dinner ended and the others drifted away, Aria and Nathan stepped outside. The night sky stretched endlessly above them, dotted with silver stars. The ocean breeze was gentle, and the sound of waves was steady and calm. Nathan looked at her, his voice soft. "I used to think success was about control, but you showed me that it is really about connection, about how we care for the people who walk beside us." Aria smiled. "And you showed me that forgiveness can build something stronger than pride ever could." He reached for her hand, and this time, she did not pull away. They stood together, watching the horizon where the sea met the stars. Nathan said quietly, "You did not just save my company, Aria. You rewove my heart." Her eyes met his. "Then, promise me one thing, Nathan. Anything. Never stop creating from love. That is the only thing that lasts." He nodded, his expression full of peace. The waves shimmered with moonlight as they stood there, hand in hand. Two souls who had once been lost in ambition but had found healing in each other. In the distance, the sign on the workshop door swayed softly in the evening wind. ReStitch, fashion for healing. As the night deepened, the camera of life seemed to pull away slowly, the workshop glowing under the warm light, the ocean reflecting silver and gold. Sometimes, the most beautiful designs are not the ones created from perfection, but the ones born from broken threads and patient hands. Nathan and Aria's story had begun as a contract written on paper, but it ended as something far greater, a promise written in the quiet language of love, forgiveness, and renewal. And in that moment, under the soft hum of the ocean and the glow of starlight, they both knew their hearts had finally found home.